Story 1. Looking back, it probably wasn't that crazy, but it violated the standards I held for myself to prevent me from being a crazy wife. Years ago, my husband's friend came over with his new roommate. This was the first time either of us had ever met or spoken to her. The new roommate was known as an easy woman, but I'm not one to judge. We all hung out and had a good time. Later that evening, after they left, I opened my laptop and found that my husband was still logged into his Facebook. I saw that the roommate had sent him a friend request and posted a message on his wall. No big deal. So I excitedly logged out of his account and into mine so I could accept my new friend and chat with her too. Except she hadn't sent me a friend request. She hadn't left a cute message on my wall, just his. So I logged back into my husband's account and blocked her. It's eaten at me for around 8 years now. I guess I feel guilty because I never told my husband. He was watching TV or something at the time and never knew that she had reached out at all. She better keep that secret locked up, or a Facebook storm of epic proportions is about to hit. Story 2. My friend's ex-wife, fiancé at the time, we took him out to the casino for his 25th birthday. He and his girl were having problems at the time, so she told him he could only stay out until 10 p.m. 9:30 p.m. rolls around and she starts calling him to remind him that he needs to head home. One of my friends takes the birthday boy's phone and turns it off. This is when chaos ensued. She proceeded to start calling all of our phones nonstop, from one friend to another, constantly. Anyone who would answer their phone would be met with an instant, "Put birthday boy in the phone," and a series of screamed profanities directed at the person who answered the phone, so we all turned off our phones. At about 10:45 p.m., she then started calling my family and contacts of everyone who was out and screaming at them, telling them how much of a piece of crap my friends were for having the birthday boy out on his birthday. So to stop the madness, we took the birthday boy home. When we got him back to his condo, his ex-wife had pulled all the bedding off the bed and sliced up the mattress and pillows in the master bedroom, cut up and stabbed his clothes and left them in the backyard with a sliding door to his living room wide open, sliced and stabbed his less than 2-month-old couch in the living room, smashed glass in the pictures of them hanging up, put his laptop in the kitchen sink and left the water running on the keyboard for us to find when we got to his house. She had left for her sister's place and was not there when we got there. We helped him clean up and lock up his place. He called a locksmith to rekey his place the next day. A week later, she moved back in with him. Story 3. This happened 15 years ago. My high school boyfriend ditched me on the night of my prom. He just didn't come to pick me up after I was all dressed up and ready to go, so he could go to his ex-girlfriend's house and hang out with her. My friends and their boyfriends all chipped in for my dinner so I could go out with them before the dance, but then I went home because I couldn't handle going to prom alone, knowing I'd been ditched. After prom was over, my friend showed up with several cartons of eggs. We drove to the ex-girlfriend's house, found my boyfriend prized Mustang, and egged it. Oh, it was also a showback convertible and had the roof down, so the eggs got all in the upholstery and stuff too. My best friend's boyfriend also apparently knifed the tires, though I didn't find out about that until later. Honestly, my friends are the only reason I got through that night. I was so devastated. They also got me so hammered later on and we had an awesome party, and they went out of their way to make sure I didn't feel like a fifth wheel. Looking back, it was a childish, mean thing to do, but man, it felt good that night. Aside from needing to replace one tire, the car was fine. He was 3 years older than me. He tried to win me back a few days later, so obviously he wasn't nearly as upset as I was, and I told him to go to hell. I definitely wouldn't do anything like that as an adult, but as a teenager, it seemed like a justified response to this situation. Story 4. I was pregnant in high school. Yes, I know, classy. The baby's dad was much older than me. While I was around 7 months pregnant, he started to come home later than usual from his job. I had a feeling something was up, but I was dumb and naive. We had 2 cars, both of which were his. I decided to swing by his work one night to say hello, but he wasn't there. I asked him about it, and he said he had to drink after work with a buddy. This is before cell phones, by the way. A friend at school told me she saw his car on her street a couple of times, which I thought was odd, so the next time he was late, I drove up and down the block and sure enough, his car was parked in someone's driveway. So I parked down the street and walked up to the house and I could sure enough hear his voice laughing and talking with someone. I looked through the windows and he was sitting at the dinner table with another woman and her 2 children eating dinner. I lost it. I got back in my car, put the car in drive and drove into his stupid lifted Ford Explorer, then reversed and did it again. I did this over and over until he came outside. By now, the entire front end of the Ford Focus I was driving was totaled. She then comes out and both are screaming at me. I have no idea what they're saying. I was blasting Tupac. I reversed it one last time, gassed it full throttle and drove into her minivan. The stupid Focus got stuck on her bumper, so I got out, threw the keys at him, and walked home 3 miles away. I know this all sounds trashy, but I don't think I ever was a crazy girlfriend until that man came into my life. It's not my proudest moment, but I'm not mad about it. Now that's what I call justified insanity. Story 5. My college ex and I broke up amicably, just going in different directions. The next guy she dated was caught drunkenly fooling around with her sister in her bed at her house party. She flipped. She was only about 5'2", 110, but she somehow hulked a half-full keg out of a second-story bedroom window onto the roof of his car. There was legal drama galore. She called me to bail her out. I did. It makes for a great story now, but at the time, holy crap, was it a hot mess. I got a crying phone call at like 4 a.m., figured out what was going on, went down and got her released on recognizance. She was too buzzed to drive herself and didn't have money for a cab. She was sobbing, buzzing, and grateful at the same time, and tried to make out with me, then got mad when I wouldn't, then I got her home and in bed. The next day, she had no memory of the night before and was super pissy that I was at her house. I slept on the downstairs couch. Then the boyfriend starts talking big game like I'm after his girl, even he's angry at her for destroying his car. Then I had a police detective come by, not believing me when I told him I wasn't even at the damn party, and I had to get records from the phone company, landline, remember, 97, to prove it. And on top of everything else, I was only a half-teen myself, so I had my own parents to deal with. Anyway, I never could decide if it was a bullet dodged or if I really couldn't blame her. That was one hell of a provocation. Story 6. This just happened on Saturday night. We're long distance right now until May and things are going super well, but I have awful anxiety. One of his friends from the new country was having a birthday party, so he and all their friends went out bar hopping that night. He made sure to tell me that he'd be out late and might not be able to text, so I was expecting it. But 4 hours passed, then 8, and I got so worried. I trust him completely, so I didn't think he was with a girl, but I was scared he'd been hurt in an accident, gotten alcohol poisoning or something. 12 hours have now passed and I'm hysterical. I've been messaging him every hour or so. I really tried holding in my crazy. Hey, I hope you're having a great night. I miss you. The messages became increasingly panicked. Hey, please, will you let me know when you get home? I'm getting worried. After just the 9-hour mark, I was mourning the loss of my best friend and partner. I was laying on my bed, sobbing, willing him to message me, even just one word. I worried so much that my stomach hurt so bad that I thought I'd throw up. And even though I trust him completely, of course depression and anxiety had to swoop in and say, since you're not good enough anyway, why wouldn't he go home with a hot girl? So I didn't know whether to think he was or be angry at him for cheating. I cried for hours because there was nothing I could do about the situation, and I just had to wait. Finally, 16 hours later, he messages me. He had turned his phone off to save the battery for the end of the night when he needed Google Maps, and knowing the way he operates, the battery was probably at 60% when he left anyway. Then they all went out to eat, then got hammered, walked around town, and he came home and immediately passed out. I was so relieved to know he was okay, and we video chatted the next day, but I never told him how badly I worried because I felt so crazy. Story 7. Well, it's not really a crazy girlfriend because it was only a crush. I worked at a supermarket in the registers, and this guy who worked at the store next door came in at the same time. Same day every week. I ended up having a crush on him despite never actually talking to him. I went to the store he worked at one day. His shift was just ending and the next person was taking over for him. I asked his coworker what his name was and he told me. I ended up going on Facebook and typing in his first name, his workplace, and where he lived, and I found his profile. After looking through all his pictures and being a complete weirdo, I made a fake account to add him to. He's accepted. Long story short, that's how I found out he was gay. Story 8. I was broken up with on the phone while I was away with family. I had to get a flight home 2 days later and showed up back at my college town with no friends to talk to. No one was really even back yet because of Christmas, so the streets were pretty empty. It had been the plan for us to have a reunion when I got back and he was going to come to my apartment, but I was just alone. I left a voicemail on his phone. I just wanted to talk, but it ended up making me sob. A few days later, we did meet up for lunch and briefly got back together. When he informed me he had the voicemail of me crying and wanted to use it as a sample in one of his garbage indie folk songs, he was not asking. He just said he was going to do it. He dumped me again out of nowhere shortly after, pretty much saying it was just for physical relations anyway. I called a bunch after that, crying, like way too much. I feel like an idiot for doing that, but it's mostly just shame because he wasn't worth crying over in the end. And he saved all those calls and messages of me upset at something manipulative he'd said, or him telling me he'd get back together and then saying no on his computer in hopes of blackmailing me for being cruel. He's shown those anxiety and depression-fueled messages to complete strangers at this point. Well, she definitely dodged a major bullet there. Her ex had more issues and drama than a reality TV show. If you're nodding in agreement, hit the like button and join me for more mind-blowing stories on my channel. Story 9. My first boyfriend in high school was about to break up with me because he was getting cozy with this hot new freshman girl who already had a reputation for giving great sloppies. But I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that he was acting differently towards me. In the past, he had been almost clingy, but he was being really distant and acting like being around me was annoying. But on this day, I was still technically his girlfriend. So my boyfriend and a bunch of other people started leaving together at the end of the school day. The high school was across the street from a bunch of restaurants, and I heard from one of the other guys that they were headed to Buffalo Wild Wings. They left without me. My boyfriend didn't say anything about it to me. So what do? Well, naturally, I walk over there, park myself outside the restaurant, and wait. I waited for probably 90 minutes, and this was before smartphones, so I was bored. Eventually, the group exits the restaurant, and my boyfriend sees me sitting on the curb. He wasn't going to acknowledge me until one of the other guys said, "Aren't you going to say hi to your girlfriend?" So he gave me a quick one-arm hug and said, "Okay, bye." Again, one of the other guys prompted him to be polite and offer me a ride back to the school. He goes, "Yeah, sure, just hop in the back. Pickup truck." The other guy says, "You aren't going to let your girlfriend ride shotgun?" Boyfriend goes, "Nah." So yeah, that was really awkward, and he called me 2 days later to break up with me. Story 10. I got broken up with. 4 months later, I was out drinking nearby, phone him up and basically tell him, "I'm on my way." He put up a small fight, but in the end, he begrudgingly agreed. So I stopped at home, was not driving, and put on my new floral dress and wedges. Really, I looked nice. I then had a friend drop me off there. Oh, and I also had a huge bottle of vodka in my purse. Despite being very inebriated already, I continued taking straight shots from it. I wake up alone in his bed and walk downstairs. The amount of hate in his eyes startled me. He began to explain how I had tried to take a whiz in his closet, and when confronted, I cried and declared, "You don't know what it's like to be a pretty woman." I left very swiftly after being told that. I don't remember most of the night. I never got the full story, as he had virtually blocked me in every way imaginable. I'm sorry, Matt. Story 11. So I can't say this is precisely a crazy girlfriend thing because we were just best friends and lovers for years, 2 to 3 at the time the story occurred, but he wanted to be. It started by internet stalking him. His MySpace, Facebook, his pictures, his friends, his notes, LiveJournal, DeviantArt. He had a blog. I was convinced I was his dream girl and was determined to prove it. I was still casually dating though and had an OkCupid profile. He showed up on my list at a 95% match, my highest ever. I paid for A-list to be an invisible visitor and scoured his profile and its hundreds of answered questions. I read every book and watched every movie he mentioned. I actually ended up sincerely liking all of them, so silver lining. Casually started dropping them in conversation, among others, so as not to tip him off. I befriended his partners and exes for inside information. Another accidental sincerity, as I'm still in contact with many of them a decade later. I exclusively smoked his favorite brand of cigarettes and casually quoted his short stories, which I was fan-level familiar with. We got matching tattoos for my birthday one year, and he had no idea. I knew the tattoo he wanted a year before and started discussing my interests in a totally unrelated tattoo through the year. The matching tattoos were his idea by the time my birthday rolled around. It worked, but we aren't together. I do my damnedest to never be that type of person, but the urge is still there. My fiancé and I had to work through it, and I ensure I hadn't done that to him. This was 10 years ago, and I still get the creeps at the thought of a guy doing that to me. Not gonna lie, this stunt is damn psycho. On the flip side, I'd give an A+ for effort. Story 12. I spent a whole year trying to get back together with a guy who literally dragged me out of our house to break up with me. I thought he was just mad because it was a fight. He couldn't actually want to end a relationship, not just over one stupid fight. Every reason he told me for breaking up with me, I heard as a problem I could solve so we could get back together. Of course, it didn't help that he was trying to morph things into a friends with benefits situation, so every flirtatious text where he was just lonely and trying to get I saw as a sign that he was starting to want me back. So I spent a whole year flirting, dressing up whenever I knew he'd be around, joking about which room in his new house would be my office when I moved back in. And here's the most crazy part. I actually started therapy to try to fix all the things that he broke up with me for. But what happened instead was that my therapist helped me figure out who I really am and what I really want. And it turns out it was not my ex. I actually started to acknowledge all the ways that he was wrong for me, instead of thinking I was the only one at fault. And I had to face up to the fact that all my effort to try to win him back was holding me back from making efforts in the parts of my life that were actually important. I had this fantasy that winning him back would magically fix my life. But yeah, there's no magic. Fixing your life is just hard work. So after a year of being crazy, trying to win him back, I told him he wouldn't be seeing me for a while. I deleted him off my phone and everything, and went completely no contact for another year. After a year of focusing on other things, casually dating some new people, spending time with friends, the next time I saw him, it was just, a guy I used to date. Now he lives on the other side of the world, and I happy birthday him on Facebook, and that's about it. I'm with someone else now, and I love him. But I don't rely on him for my happiness. If we broke up, I'd be sad, but not destroyed. It's really nice to be with someone because you want to, not because you're afraid you're nothing if you're not. Story 13. So my now ex-fiancé joined this cult, where the overarching philosophy was that you're responsible for everything that happens to you, including all your health problems, disabilities, traumas, bad feelings, etc. At one point he announced to me that he was going to be sleeping in the same bed with another girl from the cult during a retreat. I expressed that I was uncomfortable with that, and he said, "Well, you're responsible for that. You've created that feeling for yourself." At this point, I chose to reveal a little secret to him that I'd been keeping. He had a notebook where he kept everything he was learning in the cult. Most of it consisted of how to recruit new members and manipulate people. The notebook was supposed to be highly confidential, so I told him, "I went through your notebook the other day and took photos of all the pages." Needless to say, he became very angry. Of course, I told him, "Well, I'm not responsible for your anger. You created that feeling for yourself." Later on, I wrote an expose of the cult using those photos from his notebook as background information. I don't feel one bit guilty since all the cult members believe that everyone creates the bad things that happen to them. They created this. Story 14. I dated a guy who was toxic as a person, not just as a partner. I knew he was already up to no good from the rumors, small town. But I had no proof, and the guy was a superb con artist when confronted. I had loaned him an older phone I had spared from an upgrade after he'd wrecked his own. A few months down the line, things were getting worse. The gaslighting was at a whole new level, and I was trying to get out while preserving my sanity. He'd gotten a new phone, and my burner one had long been returned. I was clearing its data before getting rid of it, signing out of old accounts and saving photos I wanted to keep. I opened up the email app to his account, still logged in, and had several conversations with models arranging meetings. I took the more creative opportunity. I forwarded the messages to myself and replied back to them, asking why he'd send me such disgusting exchanges. It was everything I needed to get out of it. The proof, the admitting of cheating, the direct conversations from him, and he couldn't flip it on me. I knew it was the crazy girlfriend thing to do, but 10 out of 10 times, I would do it again to remove myself from that dude. Live and learn. Story 15. I ran behind his moving car, howling in the middle of traffic. We were in the middle of a massive fight in the car, called off the engagement, and ended up yelling and crying lots of tears. I asked him to drop me off right then and there in the middle of the road, and I opened the door of the moving car. He braked and let me out, and I obviously slammed the door for dramatic effect, only to realize seconds later that my handbag, phone, and wallet were in the car. Hence, I ran behind his moving car, howling in the middle of traffic. I just realized I'm not as stable as I pretend to be. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy what did your crazy ex do after your breakup? Story 4 is so wild. See you in that video.